OffTheHookSports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at OffTheHookSports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
So with Chris Landry, I'm Dave Hooker. Chalk Talk is now. It's brought to you by Kraft Treats. Nick Saban may be throwing some weight around. I want to get to that. Full spectrum CBD treats there at crafttreats.com. You will see a link attached to this video in which you can get a substantial discount to make your dog or cat happy and makes your wallet happy as well, especially with depending on when you're listening, these firework thingies going off on July the 4th, which I love. I just love blowing stuff up. It's I think it's one of the things, frankly, that God has bestowed on us that we should receive as a gift, and that's blowing stuff up.
Well, there you go. There's a lot of fun there. You know, it's a fireworks stand there.
Yeah. I think the 11th commandment was just be sure that you keep the distance.
But be careful that you don't hurt family members when you use them.
I've been known to do that. So here's what I heard, and the first person I want to talk to about it was you. So I heard over the weekend from what I would consider an A source, maybe not an A plus. A plus is, like an actual commissioner or coach telling me that. But I was told that Texas A&M was not the only school in the crosshairs when Nick Saban spoke out about apparently the Aggies. That's what we all drew together. But then the next step is that he was also pretty upset with Tennessee. And this is right about the time, probably a month after that Nico's Iamaleava, that his $8 million was supposedly agreed upon. Still, we haven't got a firm connection on that. Nevertheless, I do think that Nick Saban is frustrated by the way these guys are getting paid. You scouted for him, worked with him as an assistant coach in the NFL. This to me, just seems like the perfect type of thing that Nick Saban would absolutely hate, this NIL money in recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, he will adjust and he will do things, but I think what he's not liking, and I think it came out in the dust up and the finger pointing at A&M. And as you mentioned, yeah, I fully agree. I think they're not the only ones, but I think they got in the crosshairs of his thoughts. Here's the thing that I know that he doesn't like. He doesn't like the fact that there's no real regulations clearly defined. Like there's no rules. And so there's this collective, and I hear people say all the time, it's nothing wrong with it. Well, technically, if you're offering it in recruiting, it is illegal. Well, I mean, you would expect that if once they get on campus that they're going to be able to make X dollars, that it's going to be talked about in the recruiting process. I think where the line is being crossed, at least in Saban's eyes, is if you're going to a kid and saying, you come here, this is the company, XYZ company can pay you $1 million, $2 million, $8 million over 3 years, 4 years, whatever. That's illegal. And my understanding of the NCAA, if they can find out it's been done in the recruiting process, will come down hard on the schools. But how do you really, okay, Dave, you come here, XYZ company is going to pay you $1 million. Or Dave, if you come here, wink, wink, once you get on campus, wink, wink, you can expect to make, it's almost, mincing words, but there's a line apparently that's being crossed that Saban doesn't like, and maybe he read in the same article about the A&M paying all their players, about Nico getting all that money and saying, well, they're going to offer them that amount of money, and it's true. Well, then that's not. And I wonder about that, because how could Nico have an $8 million deal? Because that was talked about before he arrived on campus. So that can't be true, or if it is, it's illegal. And the reality is, so he's got an $8 million, whatever it is. We don't know if it's $8 million, $5 million, whatever it is. does he have that once he arrives on campus? Well, then when did the collectives are supposed to do things by the letter, and they better, or they're going to get caught. If you arrive on campus, you're getting it. But if you're promised it in recruiting, that's supposedly illegal. Good luck trying to coordinate and organize and officiating that part of it from an administrator standpoint.
Officiating is the big thing. I mean, the NCAA hasn't been able to officiate or enforce anything. I really don't know. I was having this conversation over the weekend with Amanda, who is nice enough to join us every weekday on Off the Hook Sports. But the protocol used to be you send a letter to the commissioner, like literally for those young people out there, a real letter that went in an envelope. And it was notarized, and the SEC would notify you when they received it. They would go over it, and you weren't supposed to say anything publicly, which Nick Saban did. Okay, so now, I don't know what Mark Emmert's doing, the retiring NCAA president, but my guess is since he announced his retirement about 2 months ago, he probably hasn't even picked up his phone. So I don't even know, Chris, who you go to have this enforced. I mean, I've got a fast car. I love driving fast. If I knew for a fact there were no cops on the road, I could get between two cities pretty quick.
That's right.
Who are the cops on the road?
No, you right now the only thing is the commissioner, and that's the way you work through it. And look, I mean, if the rumor is that Nick got on the phone with the commissioner and complained about this or that, I can believe that. I mean, I because that's he does it, and he does have the type of clout. Now, does anything come of it? I mean, does the commissioner look at it? Does he find out that Tennessee or A&M did nothing wrong? Picking up the phone and handling it that way is the right way to do it. Now, what they do is they send it by email, or if you look at A&M, foolishly sent the email to the league office saying that Saban should be suspended, this and that. Well, you can't in a Freedom of Information Act, Dave.
It's all public record.
You can't do it in an email. So everybody over their breakfast, of their coffee and bagel, can read it. You know, if the old days you sent a letter or you make a phone call, well, you can get a record that, you know, these two talked, but you don't know what they talked about. I mean, you don't know what was said. So it would make sense that Saban, if he had an issue with Tennessee or anybody else, he called and said, hey, this is what we're doing it. Look, I think that people are going to take the attitude of, hey, I don't like all these getting players getting paid money. I mean, you have that. Well, they've been cheating all along, and those cheaters over there, they always do that. Why are they complaining? Everybody thinks that their school is pure. Isn't this funny, Dave? My school does it right. Everybody else cheats. You know, my Johnny is good. You know, expel those thugs that graffitied against the school walls. But well, they were just kids having fun. I mean, it's just how that is. So I think the lack of organization, the lack of enforcement capabilities, to your point, nobody's on the road giving tickets. You don't, I mean, so you're going to have people step over the line, which is why I even hear Nick say this. Well, they're not supposed to use it in recruiting. I don't want to say, Nick, come on. You know more better than anybody that everything is used in recruiting. A coach's age, a coach's health, the facilities, girls on the campus, pretty girl. I mean, everything's used in recruiting. So you're telling me that you're not going to, I don't think any coach is going to offer a player a bunch of money in an NIL deal because they can't. And that could be, but look, here's our, list of guys that go in the first round of the NFL draft. Here's a list of guys that got degrees. Oh, by the way, here's a list of the NIL deals our guys have. That's the new age of recruiting. But do you cross over that line? How do you prove it? What enforcement? I think those are the things that Nick is trying to get. What are the rules? and there's no question why. If you can go out and if you're selling equal things, Alabama's got the huge edge. They've got more players that they put in the NFL, more championships, conference, national. But if you start throwing in money, you may not be able to get, and Alabama can pay money too, but Alabama maybe can't get all of those guys. And maybe another school can't pay 25 guys big money, but they might be able to pay 5 or 6 or 8 or 10. That will cut into maybe Alabama's recruiting dominance. And we'll see. And maybe I think that's what's, I mean, I think if they doing it at Tennessee or A&M, if they're getting him legitimate, he's got no argument. But I think he's thinking they're doing it illegitimate, and if he is, somebody's going to have to figure out whether they are or not, and hopefully they've covered their tracks if they have.
For about the past 5 or so years, 3, 4, 5, we've always said, what if this is Nick Saban's last year? And you've said, yeah, you keep guessing that, you're going to be right. So I keep guessing it every year because I like to be right with predictions. I really am. But is there a chance that in a veiled sort of way that Nick Saban might say to Greg Sankey, with the way this whole thing's going, I might just call it a career if we can't do something about that? Is there any chance he would use leverage there?
I don't think he'd say it that way, but I'm going to tell you what he would do. Word would get out to him that, yeah. And, I do. I mean, but, if you're Greg Sankey, you've got to make sure that everybody, at least understands what they're supposed to do, not supposed to do. I've thought of this scenario because you've asked me this, and I've said, all right, look, I mean, I don't know how long it's a year-to-year situation with the Knicks, but I will paint a scenario right now. Alabama's got what I think is a fantastic team this year. It may even be the favorite to win the national championship. They win the national championship, and as we get to that point, say in January, let's say they do. He wins it. It puts him in another. He's already in his category of his own, but another step. And he sees that nothing is getting done and things are going in a direction that's not good. Could I see him saying, "Want it all," and just say, "I'm. This is not college athletics, whatever." Maybe I could see him do that, but then I think he'd have to think about that because some would point, and he would not like this. Some would point out, "Oh, okay, so the rules have changed, and he's afraid to compete in the new era," and which is really not true. But that's going to be the perception. I'm wondering how that would play out. I could paint a scenario where he could walk away. Do I really think that's going to happen? No, but I could paint that scenario more if things continue to spiral like chaotically even more and more, where we have no regulations, we have no rules, no way to enforce it, and he starts to see the grip that he has on college football loosening, and he's able to go out on top. I might consider that, and that's something I really, I've never considered other than health issues with he or Terry. I've never really considered him leaving, but the timing might be right this year. I don't know. I mean, I really don't.
So if somebody cracks down on A&M or Tennessee, who is said person? Is that the SEC? Is that the NCAA? I don't even know who makes the phone call to say, hey, you need to chill out. I don't even know.
Well, it is an NCAA issue, but the
Correct.
SEC works in conjunction with the SEC, and a lot of it would be, do you have evidence to support that A&M crossed the line, or Tennessee crossed the line, or Alabama crossed the line, whatever? You've got to be able to prove it. Just to say, I get this a lot. Well, I know for a fact Ole Miss cheats, and they don't get. Well, first of all, you don't know. You assume that they do because, I don't mean to point fingers at Ole Miss, but just anyway, you may assume that they do it, and you may be right in your assumption, but do you have proof? It's kind of like saying, well, I just think this person stole or whatever, but you gotta have proof. You can't just say I think it, I feel it in my bones. That ain't gonna hold up in a court of law. And in a NCAA, you gotta have some proof. It's what I think's gonna be interesting, Dave, is you're gonna have some. You got more and more people involved. See, in the past, a lot of this was done under the table. Now with these collectives, you got it. All this does, it puts boosters more in a position of authority, and all of a sudden, said booster puts up money. Player he puts up money for not playing. The booster gets cross-eyed with head coach, and now all of a sudden, suppose he spills the beans about, well, Mr. Head Coach worked this deal in recruiting, and maybe he spills the beans, and maybe he gets that his own school on probation because he wants to get his coach fired because they locked horns. I mean, you think about things that, because you've had stuff like that before, but it was done in the background where people didn't want their names involved. Now their names are involved and they love it. It's an ego. I did this, I did that. I think that, whether it's Thunder Thornton, Roy Adams, or, the big guy at Alabama in the Albert Means situation. I mean, you got Logan Young. All those guys, all those guys kind of work behind the scenes. People knew their name, but now they're going to be more and more prominent because, particularly at A&M, all those guys, they love telling you they got a lot of money, and they love telling you they got a lot of money, and they're doing this, and we're going to be the kings of the SEC because we got the most money. And they're kind of thinking that. And, we're all kind of thinking, is that going to be the way it is, or is it going to take a while, or what? There's a lot of unknown, and I think it's going to create a lot of angst and problems. And I'm going to tell you, I just have felt like, well, Saban will figure it out. He just wants the rules to where it's on an even playing field, but he's seeing maybe some other people that are doing some things a little bit more in the collectives than he is. Because my understanding at Alabama, this is how they're doing it, is they're getting money, and money's going to go to the players legally through the collective, but they're getting nowhere near the money you're reading about other places, at least to this point. Like, the players will get money, but he doesn't really believe in the kind of the pro style where you're going to pay the quarterback $5 million. Now, if Bryce Young can go get $2 million on his own, that's fine, but he may only be getting $50,000 from the collective. And that's the same thing that the lineman's going to get, the running back's going to get, the defensive tackle's going to get. And if that person can go and get more, he can. That's how they're doing it. Others are saying, we're going to go and we're going to make a name in recruiting by getting certain guys and put together big-time money.
Yep, that's what I was told about the collective. We actually talked about, I was in negotiations with the collective at Alabama about possibly, having one of their players on from time to time. And the response was, that's fine. You just have to work in the female golfer. And I was like, Chris, I love golf. I love females, but I don't think female golfer is really going to drive traffic for the most part. I mean, I hate to be really open and honest, but that's a fact. Chalk Talk brought to you by Craft Treats. The code attached gets you 15% off. Make your pet and your wallet happy. Go to crafttreats.com. They've got the fantastic CBD products, Storms. They will chill your pet out. Same thing for car ride anxiety. I remind you, like and subscribe to this very channel. And when you do so, we'll show it more in your feed, and we'll have all kinds of good times because football season is right around the corner. For Chris Landry at LandryFootball.com. If you haven't been to that site, you're crazy. I'm Dave Hooker, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports.